What do you mean you don't know who Kellen North is? The man asked, pulling off his sunglasses with the kind of annoyance that only came from being rich and used to getting what he wanted. Waverly Hart blinked at him from behind the sleek counter of the boutique travel agency in downtown Manhattan. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and arched a brow. I mean exactly that. Should I know who you are? The man, tall, broad-shouldered, probably in his mid-30s and dressed in a crisp button-down that probably cost more than her rent, looked momentarily thrown off. Then he laughed. I guess not, he muttered, almost to himself, and leaned a little closer. I'm looking for a very specific type of trip, something private and fast. Waverly, unfazed, clicked her pen and pulled over a blank form. Okay, let's start with your name. Kellen North. Her pen paused mid-stroke, North as in North Enterprises. The man who practically owned half the luxury properties in Tribeca. Billionaire real estate mogul. She'd seen his name on buildings, not in person, and now he was standing here, looking at her like she was the only person in New York who could help him. Still, she kept her voice steady. Got it. What kind of trip? No press, no attention, just off the map for a bit, somewhere warm, private beach, maybe an island. She narrowed her eyes slightly. You running from someone, he gave a half grin, something like that. Her gut instinct told her he wasn't dangerous, just tired. There were bags under his eyes that even money couldn't hide. All right, Mr. North, let's figure out where to hide you. They spent the next hour going over options. Waverly showed him secluded villas in the Maldives, overwater bungalows in Bora Bora, and private Caribbean islands. He asked sharp, precise questions but didn't talk much about himself. Which was fine. She wasn't in the habit of prying. Still, there was something about him beyond the custom watch and the quiet confidence. She noticed the way he rubbed the back of his neck when he was thinking, or how he leaned in just a little too close when she clicked between photos on her screen. When she handed him the final itinerary, he studied her. You're good, he said. She shrugged. It's my job. No. I mean really good. You listen. Most people don't. Waverly felt a flush creep across her cheeks. Well, maybe most people don't care where you end up. I do. I want people to fall in love with their trips. His eyes held hers for a beat too long. What about you? Ever fall in love on one? She blinked. On a trip, he nodded. No, she said. Not yet. Kellen's lips twitched like he wanted to say something more, but instead he slipped a black card onto the counter. Book it, all of it, and… Come with me, she laughed, thinking he was joking until she saw the way his expression didn't change. Her smile faltered. Wait, what? Come with me. Just for the setup, make sure it's perfect. You clearly know what you're doing more than I do. Waverly stared at him. You want me to fly to the Caribbean with you, alone? Not like that, he said quickly. I've never taken time off. I don't know how to relax, and for once I want it done right. She opened her mouth to say no, but something about his eyes, tired but searching, made her hesitate. Maybe it was the way he seemed to need this more than he was letting on. Maybe it was the fact that her boss had been begging her to take one of her unused vacation weeks. Maybe it was pure madness. But somehow, the word came out before she could stop it. Okay, Kellen looked a little stunned, like he hadn't expected her to say yes either. Really? Waverly nodded. But I'm not your assistant or your… Whatever. I come, I make sure everything's in place, and then I fly back. Deal? They shook on it. The next morning, a black car picked her up at dawn. She was barely awake when she was led onto a private jet, where Kellen was already seated with 2 coffees and a folder of property options for his next resort. Work? She asked, sliding into the cream leather seat across from him. He looked sheepish. Force of habit. I'm confiscating those, she said, snatching the papers from him and tossing them into the seat beside her. Vacation, remember, he grinned. You're dangerous. A few hours later, the jet touched down on a private island in the Caribbean, white sand. Turquoise water. A villa with a wall of glass that opened out onto the ocean. It was the kind of place people only saw in magazines, and now she was standing in it wearing sandals from Target and a linen dress that didn't quite fit right. And yet, Kellen looked at her like she belonged there more than he did. They spent the first day walking the beach and tweaking small details, changing the wine selection, adjusting the lighting in the bedroom, swapping out the outdoor furniture for something more comfortable. He let her take the lead, watching her with quiet admiration. By sunset, they were sitting on the deck with a bottle of wine, the ocean glowing gold. "I don't think I've ever done this before," he said suddenly, sat still, trusted someone. She looked at him. "That's kind of sad," he chuckled. "It is." Waverly shifted, turning toward him. "Why me?" "I don't know," he said honestly. "You didn't care who I was. You looked me in the eye. You told me the truth." "That's just called being decent." "No," he said. "It's rare. Especially in my world." She didn't know what to say to that, so she didn't say anything. They just sat there, listening to the waves until the sky turned navy and the stars came out. That night, when she finally got into bed in the guest room, her heart was racing. This wasn't a trip anymore. She was starting to fall, and if she wasn't careful, she was going to crash hard. The rain came suddenly, right after breakfast the next morning. One minute the sky was clear, the next it darkened with tropical clouds that rolled in fast and heavy. Waverly stood barefoot in the open-air kitchen of the villa, watching the storm through the glass doors as it turned the ocean into a churning slate. Behind her, Kellen was unpacking a crate of fresh fruit that had been delivered by boat just before the skies opened. "You like storms?" he asked, holding up a mango. "Depends," she said. "If I'm stuck in traffic with no umbrella, not so much, but here, it's kind of perfect." He sliced the mango with practiced precision, handing her a piece. "I used to hate them when I was a kid. The house I grew up in had a leaky roof. Every time it rained, we had to put out pots and buckets." She tilted her head. "I didn't expect you to say that." "I know," he replied. "Most people assume I was born on a yacht." She popped the mango slice into her mouth and leaned against the counter. "So what changed?" "Got tired of watching other people have everything. Decided I'd build something no one could take away from me." She studied him. "And did you?" He met her gaze. "I built the empire, not sure about the peace." They spent the morning inside. Waverly showed him how to make passion fruit tea, and he taught her how to play a dice game he said his grandfather used to play with him when they lived in a one-bedroom apartment in Queens. It felt strange and easy at once, like they'd stumbled into a pocket of time that didn't belong to the real world. By mid-afternoon, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the air outside turned thick with mist and the scent of hibiscus. "I want to show you something," he said suddenly. "Where?" "Just come." He grabbed an umbrella, and they walked down a winding stone path that led into the jungle past the edge of the property. The path curved through palms and wild orchids until they reached a clearing with a wooden pergola half covered in vines. Beneath it sat a grand piano wrapped in weatherproof casing. Waverly blinked. "Is that real?" Kellen peeled back the cover, revealing gleaming black lacquer and ivory keys. "It was delivered a few days ago. I used to play." "You?" "I was obsessed when I was younger, saved up for lessons. Once I hit college, I gave it up, couldn't afford the space or the time. And now you keep a piano in the jungle?" "I thought maybe someday I'd remember who I was before everything got so loud." He sat, adjusted the bench, and lifted the lid. His hands hovered for a second, then he played. It was a soft, aching melody, something classical but unfamiliar. The notes floated through the trees, slow and deliberate, like he was searching for something in the music. When he finished, Waverly stood frozen. "That was beautiful." He looked down at the keys. "I haven't played for over 10 years. "Well," she said, stepping closer, "you just made a rainstorm and a piano in the middle of the jungle make perfect sense. You're the first person I've played for, ever." She waited, unsure what to do with the sudden weight of that confession. "Why me?" He kept his eyes on the keys. "Because you don't look at me like I'm a headline." That night they ate dinner outside under the pergola, the piano now covered again, the storm long gone. The chefs had left a spread of grilled fish, saffron rice, and chilled risée. Waverly poured them each a glass and tried not to watch him too closely, but it was getting harder not to. "You know," she said, breaking the silence, "I was supposed to go to culinary school." He raised an eyebrow. "Seriously?" She nodded. I love food, I love the way it brings people together. But my dad had a heart attack the week I got accepted. I stayed home to help out with the family business, never went back. Do you regret it? Some days. But I like where I ended up. I get to help people dream, even if I don't always follow mine. Kellen leaned back in his chair. What if you could? What do you mean? What if you had the chance to start your own travel company, one that did things differently, focused on emotion, not just logistics, experiences that change people? She laughed softly. That sounds incredible. But it takes money and connections and time I don't exactly have. What if I gave you all three? She blinked. Are you serious? I've seen the way you work. You don't just book trips, Waverly. You build stories. That's rare, and it's something people would pay for. She shook her head slowly. You barely know me. That's not true, he said. I know more about you than I've known about most people in years. Silence stretched between them. The only sound was the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. Then Waverly stood. I think I should head in. He rose with her. Did I say too much? No, she said carefully. You just said enough. Back at the villa, she went straight to her room and closed the door, her heart thudding. She knew what was happening. She felt it in the way his eyes lingered, in the things he shared, in the way he made space for her in a life where no one else seemed to fit. But she also knew herself. She didn't fall for men who lived in penthouses and tossed around business proposals like compliments. She didn't fall for clients, yet here she was, halfway across the world, already wondering what would happen when it was time to leave. She pressed her forehead to the cool glass of the window and whispered out loud to the dark sky. What are you doing, Waverly? There was no answer. Only her own reflection staring back, looking more uncertain and more alive than ever before. Waverly didn't sleep. The sheets were soft, the air conditioner hummed a steady lullaby, but her mind refused to quiet. By sunrise, she was already dressed and out on the beach, walking barefoot along the shoreline where the tide kissed the sand. Each step sent a ripple of doubt through her. She'd come here to set up a trip. That was all. She hadn't come to be offered a business venture or to feel the weight of someone else's vulnerability pressing against her ribs like it belonged there. She hadn't come to feel seen. A distant crunch of sand behind her made her turn. Kellen, wearing charcoal sweatpants and a black t-shirt, was making his way toward her. His hair was tousled, his expression unreadable. I thought you might have left, he said when he reached her. I thought about it. He nodded once. But you didn't. I don't run. I just think too much. They walked side by side, the silence stretching until the only sound was the sea pulling back into itself. I wasn't trying to trap you with that offer, he said. I hope you know that. I know, Waverly replied. But you can't just toss something like that out and expect me to be fine. I didn't expect you to be fine. I expected you to be honest. She stopped walking. Fine, I'll be honest. I don't know what this is anymore, this trip, us, the way you look at me like I'm some answer you didn't know you were asking for. I don't do half things, Kellen. If this is just a distraction from whatever mess you left behind in New York, I need to know right now. He stepped in front of her, jaw tight. You think that's what this is, a distraction? I don't know what to think. You're a billionaire who walked into my office and turned my world upside down in 48 hours. That's not normal. No, it's not, his voice lowered. But it's real, and I haven't felt anything real in a long time. Waverly's breath caught. She wanted to believe him. But belief was a risk, and she'd seen what happened when people bet on promises they didn't understand. I need you to tell me the truth, she said. Why did you really come into my office that day? Kellen looked past her to the horizon, where the sun was beginning to rise in streaks of pale fire. I was supposed to get married last weekend. The world tilted. Waverly stared at him. You what? He met her gaze. Her name was Elise. The wedding was going to be in Tuscany. Press were already on it. But a week before the flight, I found out she was negotiating with a hedge fund to buy out one of my companies. Behind my back. She wanted the marriage for power, not love. Waverly's stomach twisted. I left everything. Told my team to cancel the wedding. I didn't want to be in Europe. I didn't want to be in New York, I just wanted to disappear, so I walked into the first travel agency I saw, and found me. I didn't expect you, I wasn't looking for anything, but you looked at me like I wasn't broken. And I wanted that feeling to last a little longer. Waverly crossed her arms. You should have told me, I know, but I didn't want you to see me as some rich idiot who got played. I wouldn't have. He ran a hand through his hair. I've spent years building walls. You walked through them without even trying. She didn't respond. She couldn't. Her heart was still catching up to the truth. Come with me to the next island, he said suddenly. It's only a short ride away. It's the one I was thinking of buying before everything exploded. I want your opinion. Just your opinion, she hesitated. You just dropped a bomb on me and now you want me to hop on a boat. Yes. She opened her mouth to protest, but his eyes held something raw, not desperation, hope. I'll go, she said. But I'm not promising anything more than that. That's enough. 2 hours later, they were on a private speedboat slicing through the blue. The wind whipped Waverly's hair back, and she tried not to think about the fact that she was alone on a boat with a man who had almost gotten married to someone else less than a week ago. The island came into view untouched, wild, with cliffs that rose like ancient guardians out of the sea. A small dock jutted out from a crescent bay. This place is stunning, she murmured as they stepped onto the dock. I thought so too. It's been in negotiations for 5 months, but I paused everything after. Well, they hiked inland, cutting through thick greenery until they reached a cliffside overlook. The ocean below shimmered like melted glass. Tell me what you do here, he said. She turned slowly, taking it in. Luxury tents, not villas. Keep the wildness, solar power, minimal footprint. Build experiences around silence and stars. People are desperate to feel something again. You don't need to give them gold-plated faucets. Give them a sky with no light pollution. Kellen nodded, jaw tight with thought. That's why I brought you. Waverly stepped closer to the edge. I don't want to fall for someone who doesn't know what he wants. I want you. Her breath hitched. He stepped behind her, not touching, just close enough that she could feel the heat of him. I want to build things that matter. I want to stop pretending that money makes things better. And I want to be the kind of man who deserves someone like you. She turned to face him. You don't even know what I'd look like outside this fantasy. I'd like to find out. He leaned in, not rushing, just waiting. This time she didn't pull back. When their lips met, it wasn't soft. It was fierce, like two people who had spent too long pretending they were fine finally cracking open. When he pulled away, his voice was rough. Come back with me to New York. Not just for business. Stay for a few days. Let me show you I'm serious. She looked up at him, heart thundering in her chest. You have one chance to prove it, he nodded once. Then I won't waste it. Neither of them noticed the gulls circling above or the waves crashing far below. They were too busy standing on the edge of something terrifying, and possibly extraordinary. The black SUV pulled up in front of a slate-gray building in Soho, its windows dark and unassuming. Waverly stepped out, heels clicking against the pavement, unsure what to expect. Kellen hadn't told her much, only that he wanted her to see something before they discussed anything about the travel venture. He exited from the driver's side, dressed in a navy wool coat and dark jeans, no entourage in sight. The city wind tousled his hair as he unlocked the steel door and held it open for her. Inside wasn't an office or showroom, it was a wide, open loft with exposed brick and a high ceiling, crisscrossed with vintage beams. Half the space was empty, save for a few large canvases leaned against the walls. What is this? She asked, stepping in slowly. My late brother's studio, he said quietly, locking the door behind him. He was an artist. I inherited the building when he passed, but I never touched it. I couldn't, she turned, startled by the vulnerability in his voice. I didn't even know you had a brother. Most don't. He was the opposite of me, wild, unpredictable, brilliant. While I was building corporations, he was painting under bridges and selling pieces at underground exhibits. We didn't speak much those last few years. Then he was gone. Waverly walked to one of the canvases, running her fingers just above the surface. It was a riot of colors, but somehow balanced, almost serene. He painted this one the week before he died, Kellen said. Called it home is a person. I didn't get it then. I do now. She looked back at him, heart aching. I want to turn this space into something new, not a gallery, not a business, something in between, a place where people can come to feel again. Story-based travel, immersive exhibits, culinary pop-ups, emotions, not transactions. Your ideas would live here. Waverly blinked. You want to build a physical experience center in his studio? I want to build something that honors both of us, but I can't do it alone. She crossed her arms. What happens if this becomes just another project you walk away from? I've never walked away from something I believed in. He stepped closer, the loft suddenly feeling too quiet. And I believe in you. She could feel her heartbeat in her throat. You're really going to do this, aren't you? I already started. Legal paperwork's filed, architect's been briefed. It's yours if you want it, but I need you to take the lead. Not as a consultant, as a partner, her breath caught. What if I say yes and it all falls apart? Then we rebuild it. Together, he held out a small black folder. Inside were the initial design drafts. One of the rooms was labeled Waverly's Table. She swallowed hard. You named a room after me. I didn't name it. The architect did. He said I kept referring to it as yours. She closed the folder gently, then looked up at him. I want to say yes, she whispered, but not if you're going to disappear. I'm not going anywhere, he said. Not from this. Not from you. For the first time since the island, she believed him without hesitation. The days that followed were a blur of movement. Meetings with designers, calls with travel specialists, tastings with chefs who understood how to tell a story through a single course. Kellen gave her space to lead, but stayed close enough to catch her if she stumbled. He took her to a rooftop space for lunch one afternoon, a terrace that overlooked the skyline with a view that stretched all the way to the river. This is where I come when I need clarity, he said, setting down 2 plates of roasted halibut and citrus salad. You come up here alone, usually, but today I wanted you here. Waverly rested her chin in her hand. What made you trust me so fast? I didn't, he said. I just knew I'd regret it forever if I didn't try. She laughed under her breath. That's not the same thing. Maybe not, but it got me here. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, worn notebook. I found this in the studio last night. It was my brother's. He used to sketch future ideas, murals, installations, even poems. He wrote something I think you should hear. She waited as he flipped to a dog-eared page. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more people brave enough to feel out loud. Waverly's eyes stung. I think he would have liked you, Kellen said softly. She reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. I think I already like you more than I should. That night, he walked her home. Outside her apartment, the city quieted around them. He looked at her like something priceless. Come to the gala next week with me, he said. She frowned. Gala? My foundation's annual benefit. I never bring a date, but I want you there, not as a prop, as mine. She hesitated. Are you sure? I'm done hiding. She nodded once. Then I'll be there. When the night of the gala arrived, the venue was gilded in crystal and candlelight, filled with the city's most powerful. But Kellen didn't seem to notice any of them. His hand never left the small of her back, his eyes constantly seeking hers. When it came time for him to speak, he stood at the podium and paused. I've built towers and watched them rise above cities, he said. But none of them meant anything until I met someone who reminded me how it feels to build something with heart. He looked directly at her. I was supposed to disappear. Instead, I found her. The room fell silent. Later, as the music swelled and couples twirled across the marble floor, he led her to the balcony overlooking the river. I was never supposed to fall in love with you, he said quietly. But you did, he nodded. Hard, she leaned in, breath warm against his cheek. Good, she whispered. Because I fell first. He kissed her then, not with hesitation, but with certainty, the kind of kiss that rewrote endings and made new beginnings feel inevitable. The world spun on, but they didn't move. They had nothing left to run from, only something to run toward together. Waverly stood in the middle of the nearly completed studio, her fingers trailing across the polished walnut table that now anchored the main gallery space. Sunlight spilled through the massive skylight above, pouring golden warmth over the concrete floors and lighting up the room like it was alive. The scent of fresh paint and plaster still lingered faintly in the air, underscored by the soft murmur of string instruments being tested in the next room. The opening event was less than a week away. Behind her, footsteps approached. She didn't need to turn. "You're early," she said. "I wanted to see it before the crowd comes in and starts pretending they understand what it means," Kellen replied, his voice low. She turned to face him. There was a subtle change in him now. The sharp edges of his presence had softened, like the intensity was still there but focused, grounded. He looked around the space, his eyes moving across the custom installations, the hand-picked artifacts, the projection wall where they'd spent hours designing immersive travel reels. "I didn't expect it to feel like this," he said. "Like what?" "Like it belongs to both of us." Waverly tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "You said I'd lead, you kept your word." "I didn't think that would be the hard part," he admitted. "Turns out learning how to let someone in is a different beast entirely." She crossed her arms, a smile playing on her mouth. "You've gotten better at it. I had a good teacher." He walked slowly toward the far end of the space, where the walls were lined with handwritten letters from travelers who had submitted stories. Real stories of grief, joy, rediscovery, each one framed in glass. "I read the one from the woman who took her first solo trip after losing her husband," he said. "The one who said she didn't know how to be alone until she stood under the northern lights. She's flying in for the opening," Waverly replied. "She said she wanted to see what kind of place could make a stranger feel brave again." Kellen's voice was quiet. "You made that happen." "No," she said, stepping beside him. "We did." He took her hand, threading his fingers through hers, and for a moment they just stood there watching the light shift on the letters like the past was still breathing. Later that night they returned to his penthouse. But this time, it didn't feel like a palace of glass. It felt like home. Waverly had shelves, now real ones, filled with travel journals and cookbooks, and the ceramic dish her sister had given her when she first moved to the city. Her favorite blanket lived on the back of the oversized couch. There were 2 toothbrushes in the bathroom. No one had ever told her how quietly permanent love could feel. As she sat on the edge of the bed, Kellen emerged from the walk-in closet holding a slim navy box. "You didn't have to get me anything," she said. "I didn't. This isn't a gift." Waverly raised an eyebrow. "Then what is it?" He handed it to her without speaking. Inside was a simple gold compass, engraved with a single phrase on the back. "Wherever you go, I'll follow." She swallowed hard. "Are you trying to make me cry 2 days before a public event?" "I'm trying to tell you I'm not going anywhere." She stood and wrapped her arms around his waist, resting her cheek against his chest. "You already told me that. I needed you to hear it again." The night before the launch, they stood alone on the rooftop above the studio. The city pulsed below them, shimmering with noise and neon, but up here, it was quiet. The lights had all been installed, the final team members briefed. Everything was ready. "Do you think they'll come?" she asked. "They'll come. I keep thinking I forgot something, like I'll wake up and realize we missed a wall or didn't test the projection equipment." "You didn't miss anything." She turned to look at him. "You really believe that?" "I believe in you." He slipped a small velvet box into her hand, her breath caught. "Kellen, it's not what you think." Inside was a ring, yes, rose gold with a single clear diamond set between 2 tiny compass points, but he didn't drop to one knee. He didn't make a speech. "I'm not asking you to marry me yet," he said. "Not because I don't want to, but because right now I want you to enjoy what you built without it being about what I gave you. But I will ask you when the time is right, because I love you. And when we do it, we'll do it our way. No cameras, no boardroom whispers, just us." Waverly's fingers curled around the box and she leaned in, pressing her lips to his like it was the only answer either of them needed. The launch was a triumph. People lined up down the block. Industry leaders, artists, travelers, everyone wanted to see the place that was already being called the soul of travel. Waverly moved through the space in a slate blue gown, greeting guests, answering questions, watching as strangers wept in front of the projection wall and laughed over shared meals in the tasting room. Kellen stayed close but never overshadowed. He let her shine. And she did. At the end of the night, long after the last guests had left and the lights had dimmed, they stood at the center of the space, barefoot now, the music off, the only sound the quiet hum of a few remaining lights. "This was always yours," he said. "No," Waverly replied, resting her hand against his chest. "It always belonged to whoever was brave enough to feel it." He kissed her, slow and certain. They went home together. They always would. Years later, long after the studio had expanded into international cities, and their story had been featured in every major publication, they still returned to that first island every spring. The piano still stood beneath the pergola, untouched by time. Sometimes he played, sometimes they just lay in the sand with her head on his chest and the stars above them. Waverly never opened another agency. She didn't need to. She'd already found her greatest adventure. And Kellen North, who once built towers skyward to feel tall, finally found the only thing that ever made him feel whole, her.